Hey, folks, welcome to our new show, Beyond the Seven, live from Jerusalem with Rabbi Aaron Dovid Poston. I'm so enjoying this series. Rabbi Poston has been taking the time out of his busy schedule to do specific research to teach B'nai Noach and Jews, of course, pertinent information that go beyond the seven. So, folks, I'm just going to turn it right over to Rabbi Poston. Rabbi Poston, how are you doing today? I'm going to have to mute my mic. For some reason, I got some massive feedback here, and I hope it's not me, but everything seems to be coming across okay. Rabbi, how are you? And please share with us the Torah.
So thank you very much, Dan, and I welcome everybody who's watching right now. Shavua Tov. Once again, Shavua Tov to all those people who have come out of Shabbat, the Far East, here in Israel, anywhere in Europe, Africa, who knows, and for those people still in America, maybe they're taking their Shabbos Shluf, Shavua Tov, I don't know, but also Chodesh Tov. We are just entering now the month of Sivan, and I wish everyone a Chodesh Tov. Thank you, Dan, for having me once again.
Spend time with you and learn Torah. I mean, you're sharing concepts that we're just not getting from each and every rabbi. I know that a lot of rabbis like to take the time to get to know the student and then teach accordingly. For you to take on the task of saying, okay, I'm going to start to show you what is pertinent beyond the seven, that is universal. I think that is meaningful.
Thank you. What I'm going to talk about tonight, B'ezrat Hashem, with the help of God, we'll get deeper and deeper into why it's so important and how much respect the Jewish nation should have for a non-Jew who has decided to abandon, whether it's idol worship or any of the false religions, and cling to the one true God of Israel and live a moral life. I can't even express how much respect we should have. I mean, after we get through tonight, I think we'll have a little bit more insight why the Jewish nation needs as many non-Jews. I mean, there's 7 to 8 billion people on the planet. This is what God wants, and whatever we can do to help each individual or as nations to get there, we should be like whatever I'm doing. I think other Jews should do as well, to try to educate. And that's all we can do. Well, so I'm happy to be here.
You're bringing us a learned position. I'm thankful. You've taught us so much so far in the first 4 lessons. Have you got a prepared package today? Or do you want to give us a quick review, bring us up to speed, especially for those that might be new to the show?
Sure. Before we start, I don't know, are you on both Facebook and on YouTube? Just asking.
Yes, sir. We're live on both Facebook and we're live on YouTube. We got people on Facebook right now, and we got some joining us. My friend Scotty Helton is with us live on YouTube as well. So, yeah.
Okay, good. No, because I was trying to put it on my pad, but I couldn't get it. So I was going to turn it off. Okay. So it's like this. I think I mentioned towards the very end of last week's class something that could sound very controversial, and I want to take this up in the beginning. I mentioned that there's this idea that a Noahide, right, someone who's abandoned idol worship and has attached themselves, and I'll say it, to the God of Israel, which means they're basically attaching themselves on a certain level to the Jewish nation. Can they be called a Jew? So the truth is, I led you on just to come back. No, the truth is, I like the word Jewish, right? Like, what would a non-Jew who's attached themselves to the Torah of Israel, right? What would they call themselves? So, I mean, you can call yourselves anything you want, and I know there's many names, but I think that the person is basically a non-Jew practicing or accepting the Jewish faith. So if they're accepting the Jewish faith, and I'll go into that, I'll go to the meat and potatoes of what I mean. So could they be called a Jew? So no, I don't think they could be called a Jew, but I like the word Jewish because the ISH at the end, what else are you going to call yourself? So a non-Jew practicing Judaism. In other words, it's one, I don't even like the word religion. So just Okay, but it is
Portioned.
one universal path for all of mankind. And maybe it's not one, maybe it's broken down into several. Everyone has their own path. But, the Jew has 613 within this framework. And the Noahide, or the non-Jew, they had 7 within the same framework. And I'll just reiterate one of the things I mentioned in a previous class. And I mentioned this at the beginning of Corona to my students. The word corona means crown. I mean, that's simply what it means. And I feel this is a Jewish teaching, that this is what needs to be taught at the moment, that the crown of Torah needs to be put back in its rightful place. And I mentioned
Correct.
before, in the 10 Commandments, we call the 10 Commandments. They're not 10 Commandments, they're 10 statements. There are 620 letters.
Right.
I'm talking about the first set. The second set, it's a little bit different. But the 620 letters, Chazal taught us that each one of the letters represent a different mitzvah. I went through the Rashi, I went through the Rav Saji Gon, and that the 613 letters represent the 613 mitzvahs plus 7, the 7 for the Noahides. Again, they're not specifically 7 commandments. We talked about this. That's why we're called Beyond the 7, this series. There's 7 overreaching concepts, principles, and they have many subcategories. And hopefully through these lessons, not just mine, but many of the other teachers, you'll realize that there's a lot of details that are worth knowing. And that's also what I'm going to talk about, right? The idea of wisdom.
Beautiful.
And even though we discussed the difference between the wise and the pious, there is an understanding that wisdom is a crucial part of one's life, right? To be a thinking person, right? My Rosh Hashiva, Rav Noach Weinberg, said, I don't know what percentage, I think he said 99% of the world is sleeping. They're just unconscious, right? So you have to activate. I mean, I wish that people would activate their minds and become deeper thinkers, and not just do things by rote or do things because their parents told them. He said like this: if you were born, he's talking to us, the students of Esha Torah, if you were born in Iran, you would probably follow Khomeini. And if you were born in Lebanon, you'd follow Nasrallah. And if you were born in Ramallah, you would follow Arafat. All of them, Yimach Shemo, all of them. Anyway, and if you were born in Mea Shearim, you'd probably follow this particular Rebbe. This is not what God wants. God wants you to question everything. You have to make that choice, decide what you want to do. Don't just follow things because, they were handed down. And we know in the prophets that the nations will say, our forefathers, our fathers inherited us, or handed down to us lies. Right now, this is what the nations are going to say. The truth is, it's so too about Jews, right? We also have to go deep and discover things on our own. Okay, so going back to this idea of being Jewish. Okay, so the name Yisrael, believe it or not, in the Gemara, in Sanhedrin, that says all of Israel has a place in the world to come, the Meforshim, the commentators, explain that the word Yisrael and the word Tzaddik, which means a righteous person, are synonymous. Which got me thinking, because if we're talking about a righteous Gentile, we're using that term in English, righteous, and the Tzaddik, that's how I would translate right. I would translate as righteous. So they're attaching themselves to being, you just can't get around it. They're attaching themselves to Israel, right? Especially when we learn in the mission itself that who are these people that do not get a piece of the world to come, right? We mentioned Bilam is one of those people, but the principle should apply as well to a non-Jew, I think. And I've discussed it with other people and other rabbis, and they seem to agree with me. But it's not written anywhere. But it says if you say that the resurrection of the dead is not from the Torah, or that the Torah is not from heaven, and then it lists other things. What do you mean? So a non-Jew who, let's say, follows the 7 laws, but doesn't believe in God or doesn't believe that the Torah is from heaven, he would be excluded from the world to come. So we're here as guides to let you know that, look, examine it. Don't discount it. Don't just push it off,
Right.
okay? Come to at least an open mind that perhaps the Torah is from heaven, meaning that the revelation, we're talking about in just a few short days from now, the holiday of Shavuot, when God made this great revelation and gave us the greatest gift. Okay, it's an interesting concept because the Pirkei Avot says that the greatest gift God gave to man was free will. But then there was one additional gift, something as a expression of his even
Well, what's
more
it for?
greater love. So first he gave, out of love, he gave us this great gift called free will. And then he gave us the knowledge that we have free will. And that's through the Torah. Okay, so hopefully we can use the Torah to exercise our free will. I'm going to say, I don't know if Jews, non-Jews, who has more free will than the other? That's a whole other discussion. But again, I want to stay back. I want to go back to this idea of being Jewish. So what does Jewish really mean? So I want to convey a deeper understanding than what most people think. I have talked to people, and they say that, well, what is a Jew is based on the name Yehuda, which I would agree, no problem. But they claim, mistakenly, well, it's not really a mistake, but they're going in a certain direction with this, that it's because Yehuda is the largest tribe, therefore most Jews are from Yehuda. That is what I'm going to contend with. I'm going to argue against that point. Doesn't mean that it's not true. It is true that Yehuda is the largest tribe. We see it in last week's Parsha, right? The Jews were counted. Yehuda is the largest. But I want to go in order. I want to go in a certain simple order. I want to start with the name Yehuda first. So in Genesis 29:35, Leah, one of four mothers, who gave birth to the 12 tribes of Israel. So she named her fourth son Yehuda. Now, why? No, let's just read 29:35. She conceived again and bore a son. And she said, "This time I will thank the Lord." Therefore, she named him Yehuda, and she stopped bearing. Just keep in mind, it's real simple to remember the different mothers and who gave birth to whom. We have the word Echad. Listen, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Echad. So you have Chet. So Leah and Rachel, who were Yaakov's favorite wives, they gave birth to 8, right? 6 were, one second, sorry. And Daled. So the two, what do you call it? The two, I just got confused for a second.
That's okay. No,
this is how I
you're
heard
talking
it.
about the youngest.
Actually, check the details. Huh?
Are you talking about the two youngest? Go on.
The
Yeah,
two
go on.
handmaids, they weren't really, they were called wives. Sometimes, otherwise they were the concubines. So they gave birth to 4, but between Leah and Rachel. So once I hear she's 4, and Rachel gave birth to 2, so that's 6. You know what? I'm going to just skip that, and I'll do my homework, and I'll give you a better rendition next time. Let's just stick with Leah. Leah had 4, and her 4th son she named Yehuda, and then she stopped bearing. So what is it that caused her to say this? So our tradition tells us that she had Ruach HaKodesh. She had the Holy Spirit on her. She foresaw that there were going to be 12 tribes through the 4 mothers. So that was true. Now, even in prophecy, a prophet could come to certain conclusions on their own that could be wrong. And she made a mistake. Her mistake was that she thought that each one of the 4 mothers were going to give birth to 3 children, right? Simple math, right. 12 children divided by 4 is 3.
Yeah, 4 apiece.
So as soon as she gave birth to her 4th child, she realized she received more than she deserved. And this is the lesson here, right? She says, this time I'm going to thank the Lord. let's see the Hebrew. V'tar od, she got pregnant again. V'teled ben, she gave birth to a son. V'tomer, she said, hapam, at this time, meaning when she had her fourth son, Odeh es Hashem. The word Odeh and Hodu and Yehuda, it's all based on this exact concept of being grateful. What a Jew is, we're talking about Yehuda. A Jew is eternally grateful. We already spoke about the time that King David even says, what does it mean, b'meh? What does God ask of me, right? The word b'meh, he reads as b'meya, with 100. And he decreed, and again, it's a controversy. According to some, it always was part of our tradition. It was lost, and he realized it had to come back because of the plague. So he decreed 100 blessings a day. That you have to say a Jew is, you walk around, you're watching their mouths move. What are they doing? Right? It's not just sitting there and praying. It's, you're going to eat something. You're going to go to the bathroom. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. Your bodily functions. You're so happy. You're praising Hashem for health. This is what a Jew does. A Jew. So what's the difference between a non-Jew and a Jew? Why can't he, be in the same state of mind? Right? I'm not calling them Jews. I'm just saying they're Jew. They could be Jewish. Right? They could imitate certain aspects because the Torah is just so full of wisdom of how to live one's life. Like we talked about thievery. Thievery is one of the 613 mitzvahs for a Jew. It's also one of the 7, but they are different, right? There are different ramifications. But nevertheless, how much lessons could be learned and, drawn forth of how to live a pious life as a non-Jew. You go into a store and you talked about this, I think, the last time, and you act like you might be interested in buying something for whatever reason, but you're really not interested in buying something. That's stealing the time of the salesperson, right? To become sensitive, even if you're not obligated, but you have this overreaching obligation of not stealing, and you can learn so many things about how to behave in a moral fashion, right? In business, right? According to our tradition, the first thing that and I'm assuming it, why wouldn't it be true about a non-Jew? I have no idea. Maybe I'm wrong. But I know that a Jew, the very first question he's going to get asked when he goes to those pearly gates, I don't know if that's even a Jewish concept, pearly gates, but the Yom Hadin, when he's judged by God, is, were you honest in business? Right? It's not, did you believe in God? Did you keep Shabbos? Did you eat pork? For a Jew, why wouldn't it be true? I don't know. I'm going to assume that maybe a non-Jew should think that is also going to be asked upon him. I have no idea. But the first thing that Leah named, when she named her son Yehuda, I received more than my share. Okay, this is very important. Look at Rashi. For those who have Rashi, this time I will thank, since I have taken more than my share, consequently, I must offer up thanks. Whatever I'm receiving is a free gift. If we would ask God to give us, this is impossible, okay? God doesn't owe us anything. No. If we would ask God, give me what I deserve. Whoa, be careful. Don't ask that. I beg you. Don't ask God to give you what you deserve, because who knows? Trust me. Ask for a free gift, right? We learned this in Et Hanan, right? This is the Parsha of Bet Hanan. There's a whole lesson to ask God for a free gift. Don't ask him for what you deserve. She was so eternally grateful. So I think when we call ourselves Jews, it's not just on the fact that Yehuda is the largest tribe. That's true. And it's certainly not because most of us are from Yehuda. I will prove to you that's not true. But in the meantime, let's go through the lesson. In Esther, which is not the only time the Israelites are called Jews, but in Esther chapter 2, verse 5, it says there was a Judean man. In Hebrew, it's Ish Yehudi. Now, was he from the tribe of Judah? No, read the rest of the sentence. There was a Judean man in Shushan, the capital, Ish Yehudi, Haya B'Shushan Habira, whose name was Mordechai, Ushmo Mordechai, Ben Yair, the son of Yair, Ben Shimi, the son of Shimi, Ben Kish, the son of Kish, Ish Yemini. a Benjaminite.
Benjamin.
He was from the tribe of Benjamin. Okay, and why is he called Ish Yehudi? So look at Rashi, a Judean man, Ish Yehudi, because he was exiled with the exile of Yehuda. All those who were exiled with the kings of Yehuda were called Judean or Jews, Yehudim, among the nations, even if they were from another tribe. And Rashi continues, he says he was from Benjamin. Now, how was the northern, this is a very important point about the northern and southern split. It was a tragedy. It was not what Hashem wanted, even though God actually, through a prophet, appointed the kings in the north. There is a concept that only through Yehuda should be the king of all of Israel, but governors were allowed to exist. You were allowed to have a king of a jurisdiction within Israel.
A governor. Yeah.
So it's not a problem that a prophet was involved in appointing the kings in the north. It's not a problem. But they are subservient. Like you have a governor, I'm assuming this is true, I don't know. A governor in the United States, he's a governor of a state, but he doesn't have jurisdiction on a federal level, but he has some kind of power on a, whatever you want to call it, provincial level. And he's honored. I mean, I don't know what they call him. I certainly don't call him the president, but they probably call him your honor of some sort, some honorable title, Mr. Governor. So the idea here is that it's true. But it was a split, and it was horrible. It was a disaster for the Jewish people. And many of the kings of the north were sinners. I'm not saying any of the kings in the south were all righteous either. But then there were quite a few righteous kings in the north as well. But they set up idols. They set up a system where you couldn't go to Jerusalem. Okay? So there was rebellion against the king of Israel. So Yehuda, the king of Yehuda, was the king of Israel. And the governor, I'm going to just use that term, for the king of the north, preventing the Jews from going to what God said, go to the place I've chosen, which is Jerusalem. Right. Okay, so that was a tragedy. Now, in terms of people rebelling against the evil king, that was a fact. Let me go through it. Almost all of Levi, they knew their place. They were honorable. They didn't involve themselves in the sin of the golden calf. They didn't involve themselves in the sin of the spies. These people, the Kohanim and the Levim, were extremely righteous and bright and smart and knew their place. Of course, we're not talking about every single one of them, but by a vast majority. And they basically rebelled. They already came down from the north to the south to live in Yehuda. Now, Yehuda did not just involve Yehuda. It also had Benjamin, the tribe of Binyamin. And where was Shimon? Where was the tribe of Simon? That was within the borders of Yehuda. So you had 4 tribes that were in the south, basically, okay? But there was always intermarriage between tribes. You always had intermarriage. That was permissible. Okay, there was a period of time there wasn't, but in general, you had intermarriage. So people would leave their let's say women for sure, would leave their family state and live with their husbands, and vice versa. You also had, if you had a rich father-in-law, right, or you had a good business opportunity, you would also relocate, right? So that happened. So I'm going to now give you the figures, right? We still had, let's just use the numbers of 600,000. It's just the easiest number to deal with. So you had 50, 70,000 of Yehuda, which was the largest, okay? But still, when you take I'm going to say 1/10 instead of 1/12 of the tribes, but then you still had Binyamin, you still had Shimon, you had Levi, and then you had the intermarriage, and I'm going to throw out a number about 10%. You had 10% of the north, 10% of 600,000 is still in the same range as the equal amount of Yehuda, right? Around 60,000. So that's 10%, whatever. I'm just throwing numbers. We're not being exact here. So you had a large chunk of, we'll call them either not yet refugees. We're talking about through intermarriage alone. Then when Sennacherib, when an enemy comes and even gives some warning, the prophets warned about this. So don't you think there's every time you have war, you always see refugees. So we'll give a number. We'll give a 10% number, another 10%. Why not? So now you're talking about 20% of the northern tribes already in the south. And then you had Jeremiah. Our tradition tells us that he went out to bring them back, and he brought another 10%. So you're talking about 30% of the northern tribes. So that's already like 3 times the amount that was already just in Yehuda alone. Plus, again, you still had Binyamin and Shimon and Levi. So to say that Yehuda was the largest tribe, yes, nobody's going to argue that. But to say that you're probably from Yehuda because that's it, they're the mass majority, that's just not true. I don't know if it's 50% chance you're from Yehuda, or I think it's a lot less. We don't all have the tradition of 2,500 years. And a lot of, we would call exile, running to and fro around different countries, around this globe of ours. But you also have many Jews, I don't know what the percentage is, but I've met them, who have documents. They know exactly who they're from. All you have to do is find in your lineage a great rabbi, 200, 300, 400 years ago, and they themselves, those rabbis, have documents with how they go all the way back to the 12 tribes. Wow. So it's not like you really have to keep 2,500 years worth of documents. You only have to know from tradition 5, 6, 7, 8 generations, which is not that difficult in a Jewish lifestyle because there was no, I say for many years there was very little intermarriage. And people were very proud of their heritage. I know people, they just know sometimes it's the last name that gives it away, who they're from, which rabbi, this, that, and the other thing. So what did I say so far? So you have basically the idea of the refugees, the internal tribal marriages.
Yeah, coming to the south.
Yeah, Jeremiah brought back. Okay, now that's another idea. Now, another idea why a Jew is called a Jew. Now this, I hope people don't get me wrong. When you think of the word Christian, right, it's someone who believes in Christ. What does Christ mean, or where did it come from? It came from the concept of Mashiach, the anointed one, right? So they're people that supposedly, I don't think they do. I don't think most of the Christians actually believe in this deity, whatever. That's my own personal opinion. I think they just were told lies and they just say, yeah, I believe, but they don't really believe. But okay. So let's just say they call themselves this because that's their faith. They proclaim to believe in the anointed one. Well, where did they get that from? That's what Yehuda stands for. The Mashiach ben David, right, which we all are. Anybody, and I'm talking about non-Jews, right? These Ben Noach who are righteous. They've come to understand that the true Messiah has not yet come yet. The true Messiah is from the seed of David, from the tribe of Yehuda. So they're basically saying, I believe in the anointed one who is coming through, is promised to come through the seed of David, meaning from the tribe of Yehuda. To say I am Jewish, or I'm Jewish, right? I profess the Jewish faith. It means I believe in the Messiah coming through Yehuda. Now that's just my thing. I actually picked up bits and pieces of this from Rabbi Tovia Singer, and I go with it because I really believe this is true. Now another idea, I mentioned about the split between the north and the south. So you have what we know is a mistake, a tragic mistake of, let's say, disconnecting or rebelling against that president, that overall, right, king, structure. So basically, anybody who calls themselves a Yehudi or Jewish is saying, I believe, again, in that Davidic dynasty. I'm actually giving honor. Forget Mashiach per se, like that. I mentioned that the word Christian could apply to the anointed one, but just simply the monarchy itself, just the concept of the monarchy itself. So there's a concept called allegiance or honor. I looked through the source just to come up with a bunch of words, and I think we can all relate. There's a faithfulness, there's a homage, there's a dedication or a loyalty or adherence to. You're adhering to that monarchy. And I'll go one step further to the word obedience, right? I'm obedient to the Davidic monarchy, right? This is an amazing concept. So I know I left you guys at the last shir, and I mentioned how, and what is a Ben Noach? Is he Jewish? No. but he could be Jewish if you follow what I meant all along. So I hope that was enlightening to some.
Well, Rabbi, I do find a lot of people, especially those of the 70 nations, especially those that are even new to the notion, they most do not understand that the identity of a Jew is more than just its nationality, and it's more than just its religion. It's the kind of the whole package of being, from the line all the way back to Moses and all the way back to Abraham, but being in that promise from the time of Moses. It's the whole promise entitled with the nation that Hashem had promised to Abraham, and that blossoming into becoming that nation. So it's intermingled between religion and nationality. I mean, I live in Canada, which is quite a melting pot, I hate to say. And, the melting pot has its strengths, but it also has its disadvantages. And I learn, especially from the Jewish people, that, there's some honor in the preservation of something that's pure and righteous and holy and just. But I like where you're going with this.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to go even deeper into something I brought up last week, and this was in Gemara Sanhedrin Nuntet 59a. And I found the Ben Yehuda asked a brilliant question, and I think even a better answer, but you wouldn't have such an answer without the question. So we all are familiar, I'm assuming that many of the Bnei Noach are familiar with the Gemara that mentions in the name of Rabbi Yochanan about a non-Jew. Now, I'm going to say, we talked about this, he's an Oived Kochavim, that means someone who still worships idols. He should not be involved in learning Torah, because the Torah was given and commanded to us by Moshe, and there was a discussion, was it Gezela, Geneva, is it stealing, or is it sexual impropriety? And that is a discussion on its own. But then comes a brisa in the name of Rabbi Meir, and Rabbi Meir says, from where do we know that not an Ovei Kochavim, that means an idol worship, but a goy, someone who's given up idol worship, who is oisek b'Torah. In other words, oisek could mean learning and teaching and really delving deep into Torah, that he is what? He's like a Kohen Gadol. He's like a high priest. And the verse was brought down. We discussed this a little bit. Ushmartem et chukotai, and you shall guard or observe my decrees, ve'et mishpotai, and my laws, asher yaseh osam ha'adam, which will do in them or perform in them a man, v'chai behem, and live in them. Now we discussed the idea that, look, Torah is embedded in that verse because ushmartem, you shall guard. There is a hint that is talking about learning Torah, becoming wise. Where did you see it? 1 second. I might not have it. Okay, 1 second. Let me just continue on. I'll get to that point later. So,
very good.
There is this ushmartem means to learn. And I think I discussed this before. Even the mitzvah to learn Torah by a Jew is embedded really in the verse that says you shall teach. So don't think, and I heard this in the previous class with Rabbi Chaim Kaufman, that it's just about learning. If you're not willing to give it, I don't think it means give it over to other people. I don't think it means that much to somebody. In other words, the value, it's so valuable, and it's something that you're not going to be lacking when you give it over. In fact, you're even going to gain more, right? It's that giving that keeps on giving. I'm sure there's a better phrase, right? The gift that keeps on giving. This is unbelievable.
Your learning increases when you teach, yeah.
No, so the idea that learning, you would think, is something that is self-absorbing, right? And it could be. But when you know that the source material, the verse in the Torah, Vishinantam livanecha, and you shall teach your son, is the verse that teaches you have to teach. I'm sorry, is the verse that teaches you that you have to learn. The verse itself says, and you shall teach. And so we discussed this as a prerequisite. In order to teach, you have to learn. But the real, I'm going to say the real words anyway, is to teach. So we discussed this already. The rabbis were asked, who do you learn more from? Your own teachers, your colleagues, or your students? And they all answered unanimously. I learn more from my students. So if you want to learn, listen, I was involved with Eish Torah for many years. And the Rosh Hashiva of Noach Weinberg, Alav Shalom, he said, if you know just the alphabet, right? Just the alphabet, right? Just the ABCs, Aleph, Bet, Gimel. You have an obligation. You have an obligation to go out and teach. Imagine he taught us about the people in Russia, the Jews in Russia, it was forbidden to learn Torah. This is our generation, right? It was forbidden to learn Torah in public, right? They had to go into basements. They had to, send all kinds of secret messages of how and when they would meet. And some people only learned a few words, and they would pass those words on like a code. They would risk their lives to teach what we call the truth, right? So anyway, that's enough for the idea of why it's so important to teach. But the Gemara, we understand learning or teaching is embedded. And how do we know non-Jews? Because of the word ha'adam. Now that is on its own a very interesting lesson. Now this also could be controversial. The word in the Tanakh, and when it says ha'adam, it means Jew and Gentile. But the word Adam without the hey means Jew and Jew alone. That sounds funny, you and you alone, but Jew and Jew alone. So I'll take the piece of the Ben Yehuda and discuss that right now, because we say that the name of God is embedded on the Jew. First of all, Yehuda is the same letters as Yud K. Well, it's the same letters anyway, Vav K, but there's a Dalet in there, right? And the Dalet, however you want to look at it, even though the word Yehuda means thankful, grateful, appreciative, but it also means to admit and to acknowledge, okay? And the word vidoy, like to confess, it's the same root also. It's to confess is to acknowledge what you have done wrong. But anyway, so the Yehuda is God's name with a Dalet representing the many things, but one of them is that we have an obligation to teach the world. Dalet is always like a representative of the four dimensions of this world, something physical. So the Ben Yehuda I mentioned is the Ben Ish Chai. Let me just continue. I'm sorry, I missed one line in the Gemara. So it used that verse, and the verse, I'll just reiterate where it is. It's in Leviticus 18, verse 5. So it says at the end, Osam ha'adam v'chai behem, which a man does and lives in them. Kohanim Leviim Yisraelim lo ne'emar ela ha'adam. Now it doesn't mention the word Yisrael. It doesn't mention Jew. It mentions the word ha'adam. So for some reason, the very fact that it doesn't say Kohanim Leviim Yisraelim, that gives you the hint that it means ha'adam is talking about the non-Jew. And therefore the conclusion is, you learn from this that even a goy who's involved in Torah, and involved could mean teaching, and very much will mean teaching and going deep, is likened to a high priest, a Kohen Gadol. So basically, before I read this Ben Yehuda, the main question that really bothers at the Ben Yehuda, and it should have bothered me. Where is this Kohen Gadol in that verse? I already told you, to teach or learn is there. Non-Jew is there. But the conclusion of Rabbi Meir is that he's likened to a high priest. Where in that verse do you see the word high priest? Okay, so let's start with the fact that it says, it does, the actual Brisa says it doesn't say Cohen, Levi, or Yisrael. So let me just sum it up real quickly. He goes through this idea that the word Adam is Jew, and Ha'adam is all mankind. So if you take, maybe I should just read. I like to read his words instead of trying to paraphrase. I thought maybe I'd save some time. He says the kasha, right? So a little bit of a question about these words. Cohen, Levi, and Yisrael is not mentioned. The chi im yesh shum mitzvah b'Torah sheniskara al shem shloshtam halo kol mitzvah sheniskaro al shem Yisrael bilvad afagav the shaychi b'shloshtam. What's the difference, right? Is there? It's like a rhetorical question. Is there any mitzvah in the Torah that mentions all three of them? Is it not all the mitzvahs that are mentioned by the word Jew alone really obligated on all three of them? Whenever it says Israel, why mention Cohen Levi at all? Why does the Brisa have to mention that Cohen Levi is not mentioned? Just say Yisrael, maybe. Here he says, V'chan hachi havele lemem Yisrael, lo nemar ela adam. Just say, it doesn't say Israel. So say it means, so the fact that it says ha'adam must mean to include non-Jews as well. So he says, look, it looks to me like this. With the help of God, I'll explain. That Israel is called by the name Adam, whereas the non-Jews are called Ha'adam with the Hey. And the reason is because for Israel, they have three madregot. They have three levels of holiness. They are the Cohen, Levi, and Yisrael. The Chol Kedusha Nimshach Mishem Yud-Kei. And all of their holiness emanates and stems from the Yud and the Hey. Now, what's Yud and Hey? That's 15. What is it 3 times, right? You have Yisrael, Cohen, Levi. So you have 3 times 15 is 45. And what's the gematria of the word Adam? Is 45. Okay. Therefore, Shemaskas Yisrael b'Shem Adam. Now we understand why the Jew is called by the name Adam, because that's because the Yud K, we're talking about those 2 letters, that name is on the 3 levels of the Jew. Ki'ilu mazkirim b'Shem kohanim levim Yisrael. Whenever you mention Yisrael, whenever you mention the word Adam, you're talking about Cohen, Levi, Yisrael. The kan kavanato lomar, here the intention by saying Adam and not saying Ha'adam. 1 second. The fact that it doesn't say Adam, it only says Ha'adam, that's the intent. Kevan the Torah Adam, since the description of Adam, which is man, again, Ha'adam is mankind and Adam is the Jew. Koi kohanim levim Yisraelim. That's what it means by Adam. The 3 levels of the Jew. And that's why it's mentioned here. Kohanim levim Yisraelim is not mentioned, at least in the Brisa, in the Tanaic statement, in order to teach you that the description of man includes all 3. However, the intent of the goal of his intent of Rabbi Meir is that Adam lo nemar ela ha'adam. In our verse, God said ha'adam, which describes the Umas Olam, which describes all the non-Jews. They're Umas Olam. They could fit into this ha'adam. They obviously do. And therefore, in terms of learning Torah, let's just leave it at that. It's not only permissible, but one who dedicates their life to doing so is likened to the Kohen Gadol. Again, we're still stuck with the question, where in the world does the Kohen Gadol fit in? All we understand now is that Adam is Jew and Ha'adam is including all the non-Jews. So this is unbelievable. Hang in there with me. So this is where he says that even a non-Jew who involves himself in Torah, he is likened to a Kohen Gadol, high priest. Now, what is it about a Kohen Gadol? He is a level above the rest of the Kohanim. Right. Kohen Gadol is raised up. He's higher than the rest of the Kohanim. Yesh lo yitaron el achiv. He has a advantage over his brothers. B'nei umato. Now we're talking about, let's say, the non-Jew, right? He has an advantage who studies Torah. He has an advantage over the rest of the Bnei Noach, over the rest of the non-Jews. Like a Kohen Gadol, he has the advantage like a Kohen Gadol has over his brothers. So just keep this in mind. The Kohen Gadol is raised above. He has a higher level, whatever that means, a status of honor and perhaps even spirituality than the other Kohanim. However, the question is, Hecha Niskar, where's the mention or even a hint to the Kohen Gadol in that verse? Unbelievable question. Why shouldn't we have all asked that question? So he says, it seems to me, with the help of Hashem, to explain that the advantage, the Yitaron, Sheyesh Kohen Gadol on his brothers is in two ways. One, that his lovesh, that his lavush, that the clothes that the Kohen Gadol wears, what is the difference between the Kohen Gadol's garments and the rest of the Kohen? He wears 8 garments, and the regular Kohanim wear 4 simple white garments, and the Kohen Gadol wears these 8, let's say 4 of them are much more elaborate than the regular. So he wears 8. Ve'ein shar Kohanim rishoyim levosh, and a regular Kohen is not allowed to wear these additional 4 garments. He only wears the 4 simple ones, whereas the Kohen Gadol wears all 8. And furthermore, what other advantage is there to the Kohen Gadol over his brothers? There's a Yitron biyom Yud b'chodesh Tishrei, the 10th of the month of Tishrei, which is Yom Kippur. What happens for him? She'ein avoda kshera ela rakbo. He is not allowed to do that particular service except on this particular day called the 10th of Tishrei, which is Yom Kippur. It's one day of the year he gets to enter. So his advantage is what? First of all, it's 8, something to do with the garments, and something to do with the date, which is the Yud, the 10th. I hope anybody who's trying to guess where I'm going with this, it's said in the verse, Chai behem, Chai, Chet Yud, he shall live in them. Remember we said, where is the Kohen? You're going to compare a goy who learns Torah to a Kohen Gadol based on this verse? I got the learning part, right? What else did we say? I got, I'm sorry, just go back in the verse. I got the learning part. I got the goy part from Ha'adam. Well, what about the Kohen Gadol? Here it is. This is what he says. That since he's allowed only him to go in to the Holy of Holies. Now, you might come up with other differences. There are other differences between a Kohen Gadol and the other Kohanim, but they're negatives. In other words, these are 2 positive commandments, that he wears the 8 and he goes in. But the Kohen Gadol, so he's not allowed to marry a widow. But the other Kohanim, the regular Kohanim, are allowed to marry a widow. So you might say, look, there's other issues that are different. Why don't you try to explain them? So he says, no, that's a negative. We're only discussing the positives for this matter of Chai. So now he goes into the second explanation. Yitron elu simanim Chai she'em chet begadim. The word Chai, live in them. Chet Yud. They're the 8 garments and the Yud of Tishrei. It hints to in the verse Asher yasa osam ha'adam chai behem, that a man should do and live in them. Meaning to say, who adam nikra chai? This is a person who's called alive, and this alive is really talking about olam haba. He's going to go to olam haba. But chai al shem shtei yitronot elu sherashai sheroshe teva shalem chai. Okay, I explain that. And you should know, the Mashakatu Batalud Shafilu Akum, he clarifies what many people have a problem with, and he says, and this is clarifying what I said earlier, in that first verse, which discusses who has a big problem learning Torah, that's a goy. That's an Oved Kochavim. That's someone who worships idols. He has a big punishment. Now, why? Why should he be punished? Whereas the regular goy, the one who's already given up idol worshiping, he's not only permissible to learn Torah, but it's even praiseworthy. And I just want to clarify one more point, because the Gemara does say that is specifically where he's involved with the 7 mitzvahs. Okay, so I just want to make sure that we understand, although there are other opinions, and we'll see them, there's so much to learn. These 7 universal principles, even though they might be 70, 80, 100 mitzvahs, right? Because they're overall arching. There's so many details we talked about over and over again. Everybody has a Yetzer Hara. Everybody has to work on their character. The whole Torah is about character development. The whole Torah is about character development, right? You don't have to follow doing shotness or not, but what be the problem of trying to learn what's behind it and adopting certain parts of your life because that's what it does for us, right? We have to follow the dictates of God no matter what. He said, do it, we do it. But we have books and books to explain how this is supposed to sensitize you in your relations between man and man, between man and God, between man and yourself. Okay, so the Torah is just so full of wisdom that there's almost no limit to what a non-Jew could involve himself with. But he must, and I'm saying this, I usually don't tell you what you have to do, but you must involve yourself with what you have an obligation for first. And once, and believe me, it's probably a lifetime, but listen, you could learn and should learn what you enjoy learning. If it's philosophical things, if it's whatever it is, right? Whatever rocks your boat, whatever uplifts your spirit, whatever is going to give you more cheshek, more desire to fall in line and be obedient to Hashem, then you should do it, right? We talk about Musa, right? Musa is like a catalyst. It will help you become more obedient, right? It'll help you clarify who you are, the potential that you have, and help you refine your character on the way. So let me just read the last line, because he mentioned in the first part where it was problematic, that was an Oived Kochavim, but where it's learning Torah compared to a Kohen Gadol, it's the word Goy is used. So remember, he's from Iraq 150 years ago, and yet he knew, like many people are today, squabbling what the Rambam really means and what the Rambam really says. And I'll just use his words. When he says what it says in the Talmud, Efilu akum is oisek b'Torah, ta'ut defus. It's a mistake. It's a mistake. Tzarek lomer efilu goy oisek b'Torah, but it needs to say even a goy who's oisek b'Torah. We're talking about the second line. The first time it's used, it's an oived kochavim. But when it comes to the Kohen Gadol, that's goy, not an oived kochavim, because an oived kochavim means someone who is worshiping idols and the stars. And we all know Rebbe Meir, lo ayri ba'oived avodah zara she'over ha-mitzvahs ha-gedola sheba mitzvahs b'nei Noach. Rebbe Meir, he's a das yachid. I just want to mention also, when we have a system. We don't just follow Rebbe Meir, okay? It's very important. Rebbe Meir says that it seems that if all that a goy has to do is give up idol worshiping, and he's like a bona fide ger toshav of Bnei Noach, that's the biggest mistake anybody could ever make. Number one, we go by the majority. That was the rabbi said, no, you need all seven. Just giving idol worshiper is not going to get you your key into heaven. Okay. There's another concept. Rebbe Meir and Rebbe Yehuda argued a lot, meaning they have on the same page in the same discussion, two different sides. Whenever Rebbe Meir's name is mentioned, we never go like him. It's just like it's like anybody that knows anything about Talmud knows this. We don't. As soon as Rebbe Meir and Rebbe Yehuda are mentioned, just chalk out. Doesn't mean we throw away Rebbe Meir, but no, we don't go like Rebbe Meir. They specifically mentioned his name as a key to know, because Rebbe Meir's rabbi went off the derech. His name was Acher. We'll talk about this story another time. And basically, he went off the path, and it was well known. Rebbe Meir still learned from him. He was such a great guy, this Rebbe Meir. He could still learn from him, but we would never give honor to his rabbi again. And therefore, whenever Rebbe Meir's name is actually mentioned, it means we're not following that opinion. Whenever Rebbe Meir is not,
and nobody would know this if they're not a Jewish person.
Anybody who studied Talmud seriously would come to this full knowledge. Now, sorry to say, we're learning something new. So basically, it comes down to another concept. We always follow the majority, right? You have the rabbis and you have Rebbe Meir. In that particular instance where Rebbe Meir says it's only giving up shituf, right? And then the rabbis say, no, it's seven. It's clear. We go the seven. It's not this one thing. Anybody who fell into this hole of thinking that Rabbi Meir is a legitimate shita. No, I'm not saying he's not. We're talking about Rabbi Meir. But they dafka mentioned his name. I want to mention that all the other Mishnayos are basically Rabbi Meir's, the anonymous Mishnah. Anytime there's no name mentioned in the Mishnah, it's always Rabbi Meir. They don't mention his name, that we go with it. As soon as they mention his name, we don't go with it. I mean, this is like, you have to twist your head around for that.
Yes. That's what I meant, yes.
Okay, so now we covered, I think, part of that. I want to go a little bit, do I want to go a little bit on that? We can save that for another time. Okay. I want to mention about this concept of needing to be educated, right? Why shouldn't a non-Jew, a Ben Noach, want chachma? I mentioned in my shir, and you can find it, my last shir on Thursday night, which is entitled something about the Torah's response or God's response to God TV, and hanging the flag really high, that the way we were processed, I don't know if that's the word, orchestrated in the desert with the four different sides relate back to what we've been talking about. It was really a nice mesh, it really putting everything together, that the Shekhinah will not reside on a person unless they have four character traits. We spoke about them last week. Wisdom, chachma, osher, wealth, gibur, strength, and anava, humility. So the Kliya Kar, which I like to give my class in, explains that the way that they were formulated, the way they were choreographed, is that who went first? It was Yehuda. He's the mechokek. He is the lawgiver, right? Keep that in mind. This is everything we talked about already before. You don't have to be part of Yehuda to attach yourself to the law. This is the law of Moses, right? So Yehuda was in the center of this eastern front because they went first. You had Yisachar and you had Zevulun. And the Kliya Kar went into how each one of these three, it's very easy with Yehuda, but also Yisachar and Zevulun, how they were all related to Chachma. And then he goes on and to describe the others, how each side represents one of these four madrigot, one of these four levels, because we're referring to the Shekhinah coming down, specifically after the census of 600,000. Okay, so I don't want to go that much into it, but I want to basically show you, anybody who has an open mind understands how important Chachma is. You want the Shekhinah, you want to have a presence of God in your life, in your home. You learn from the Torah. You learn what the Torah has to offer you. All right. Now, besides acquired wisdom, one of the lessons we're trying to get across in this Mesilat Yeshari, right, in the path of the just, which Bezrat Hashem at some point we're going to get to, has to do with his introduction. He says, I'm not here to teach you anything new. I'm here to remind you of what you already know. How is it that the 7 Noahide principles, right, we say, and I say we say, we're talking about from the Jewish perspective, that a non-Jew is obligated in anything that's logical. That's why there's really many more
mitzvahs. Which they should already know.
Right? Anything that is considered self-evident, obvious, intuitive. These are words that means you know right from wrong, but you need to review them. You need to go deep into them. You need to become sensitive to them. Because if you think you know, okay, I got the 7 down, there's so many things you probably don't. Remember, because when you're confident that you have it is where you don't feel the need to review. You don't feel I shouldn't say you, most people don't feel the need to go any deeper. They'll say, I'll explore new, exciting avenues. But if this is something that is so important, which we describe over and over again that it is, then you might as well go deeper and deeper and do review. But review what you intuitively know and which is so obvious. It's just so important. I just want to mention about opinions, right? We say that we use the word makloket. Makloket can mean there's a dispute. But the dispute in Judaism, when you have two rabbis, they already agree on 99.9%. It's a one nuance that they have a different perspective on. And they're both true. This is something that we say. And this is why we don't discount that minority opinion. Well, like Rabbi Meir, we're not going to throw it away, right? It's valid, and it could be used in extreme measures. If there was a great loss of money, or if it's a rabbinic ordinance, right? So there's going to be times where the Sanhedrin will make a decision that goes against what we've been doing for all these years, but they won't come up with something new. Whatever is in our Talmud, even if we'll call it a minority opinion, it's a valid opinion, and it will be used in either extreme emergency. Yeah.
It's required. The times call for it. Yeah.
But what is most important is that we follow the majority, right? We have the pasuk in the Torah. I can look it up right now. If I'm not mistaken, it's in Deuteronomy chapter 17. And let's see. Yeah, it's called the rebellious elder. If you go to verse 8 of 17 of Deuteronomy. So this is another proof for the oral Torah. Not that I need to prove anything, but for anybody who has any questions, what is this thing about the oral Torah? Because I met some ex-Christians who basically, have always said, well, I don't want to fall for the doctrine of men. I've already fallen for the doctrine of men before, and I see that Judaism has so much truth, but I'm afraid to go that one step and fall for the doctrine of man. What does that mean? We have to redefine the term. Is it a doctrine of man? Is Judaism a doctrine of man because they have so many rabbinic ordinances? Look what it says. Again, chapter 17, verse 8. If a matter of judgment is hidden from you, between blood and blood, between verdict and verdict, between plague and plague, matters of dispute in your cities. So listen, anything that's crystal clear, all the Jews know, there's no question. But when you have a question, you have a doubt, you don't know the answer, so you take it to the local court. The local court tells you what to do, you follow them. What happens when the local court doesn't know? So then you shall rise up and ascend to the place that Hashem your God shall choose. Now you may say, I don't know, it's the Vatican, it's, Salt Lake City. I have no idea what someone might say. But we know what it means, right? The God, the place shall choose is here on the holy hill of Jerusalem, where the Sanhedrin would sit. And it even says, you shall come to the Kohanim, to the Levites, and to the judge. In other words, not all of the judges were Kohanim or Levites. They were really the ones who should be studying most of the time and being able to judge. But you had, Baruch Hashem, you had very worthy Jews to sit on the Sanhedrin, who weren't from the Kohanim or the Levite tribe, and to the judge who will be in those days, meaning this is for eternal. This is not just at the time you had a temple. You shall inquire, and they will tell you the word of judgment. So now you go to them. The Torah itself says you have to go to them to determine the judgment. And then it says you do according to the word they will tell you. Again, even when you hear the word oral Torah, Torah means instruction. Oral, it says to the word which they tell you. They're telling you something. They're opening their mouth. Okay, that could be they could write it, but this is something that they are verbally or coming to some kind of conclusion and decision. So you're going to do according to the word they will tell you from the place that Hashem will choose. So it's true. Right now, we don't have a Sanhedrin. So we don't have, but we have to go by the majority of at least what else are we going to do? We go by our own rabbis, and hopefully they are in touch with other rabbis who are basically coming to some kind of consensus. This is the best we can do until we have the Sanhedrin. To the place that Hashem will choose, you shall be careful to do according to everything they will teach you. So whatever they teach you, they're teaching you something new. For you, it's new. It was a doubt. Something got lost. It wasn't, or you had some new invention. What can we do with an elevator on Shabbat? They didn't have elevators 300 years ago, but they had the principles. The principles they had, and the principles are what, like, that's the whole Gemara. The Talmud is discussing these 13 principles.
Like a light bulb, is considered like lighting a match or lighting a fire, isn't it?
Well, that's one of the opinions. All the rabbis got together when electricity became very popular and tried to determine, well, what is it? So the old, what do they call candescent light bulbs? Well, it had a filament that would turn red. Today, LED, I don't believe, has anything near what the candescent light bulb was. But at least then, it could have been fire, which you're not allowed to ignite a fire, or it could be melting, like it becomes red hot. So you take metal. So you're talking about like cooking. Okay, so cooking and igniting fire are two different of the 39 malachot. There's another idea that it could be building. Yeah, people building. How's it building? So thank God, all the men in my family, they're all electricians. And I always grew up with this idea of, they called it building a circuit. So what do you mean? You're connecting this wire, right? And then all of a sudden, now there's a full circuit. It's going around. So the problem with that, what most people agree is only the main would be building, because that's part of the building process. You build the whole building, and until the main is switched on, but usually, like, you think if you open a door or open a cabinet, you're building or destroying. No, it's on hinges. It's meant to come off or meant to open and close. So the light switch is meant to go on and off. It's not really building. So you're not really building a circuit within the house. But the main would be problematic. The main, in fact, you could be building and paying for your mortgage while your house is being finished, and finally you're ready to move in. It's like the finishing touch, right? As soon as I don't know if the electric company does it or somebody else, as soon as they put the building, switching on the main, right. With the approval of the electric company, and you're allowed to now move in because everything's up to standard, that's building. That's part of building. So the main would be, as opposed to, but don't get me wrong, there's probably a minority opinion that holds a light switch is like building a circuit, and that would be problematic. I don't agree with it, but okay. And I think there's another opinion. But so we take all of those opinions into consideration. Mm-hmm. That's because they were all correct, right? There is an aspect of each one that violates the spirit of Shabbat, right? And it could be, we don't know anything about electricity, but the whole concept of being on your phone, wherever it is, 24 hours, 7 days a week, is not in the spirit of Shabbat, right? The rabbis have this authority to say it's forbidden. And then they have this discussion, what exactly is the forbidden nature of it? Okay, so let's go on. If we're still in the verse 11, according to the teaching, let me just go back, right, from the end of 10. And you shall be careful to do according to everything that they will teach you. Now they're teaching you. According to the teaching that they will teach you, according to the judgment they will say to you, you shall do. What is the need to repeat about teaching and telling and telling and teaching if it's not an oral Torah? That's what the oral Torah is. You shall not deviate from the word. Again, the word. And what do you need that word that they will tell you? Again, it's all like, hello, if you're sleeping, if you don't understand that there's a concept called a living Torah. God did not, and this is the big issue with Greek philosophy and maybe even Christianity, the way they believe their Godhead, that he is too big to deal with us petty people, right? He created the world, he left. He's not involved. First of all, prophecy itself proves that he's involved, right? That's what prophecy is. It's just showing you his constant involvement, right? But the idea here that God is totally involved with everything we do. He's not so high and we're so small that he wants nothing to do with us. Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. In fact, you're talking about, it's called a living Torah. he's in wherever he is, right? In heaven and in every molecule of the world, wherever he is, he's with us in our decision making. We call it Siyata D'Shmai. I read you the Ben Yoda. Every time he makes a statement, he says, with the help of Hashem, I can explain it, right? You don't think these rabbis on the Sanhedrin pray to Hashem, they come to the right decision? He helps them. He helps them make the right decision. And of course, sometimes they make mistakes. And the Torah itself says, just imagine, the Torah says you don't know what to do, you go to the Sanhedrin. That means it's a dictate of God. It already is God's, what was the word I used before? I used it when I said that the doctrine. God says, I'm giving, it says in the Torah is not in heaven. It's on earth. The Torah is no longer in heaven. It's here on earth. Meaning the instruction manual is given to the Sanhedrin to I'm not using the word manipulate, because that sounds too coarse, to steer, right? To
Initiate.
You have a better word for me?
I'm thinking like, yeah, to guide well, it's an instrument.
Navigate.
I was seeing. I'm thinking of a ship, an old ship's wheel in my mind as you're talking. But you navigate. You hit it right on the head.
I like that word. So it says you shall not deviate from the word that they shall tell you. So they're helping us navigate, right? When you're on Waze or what they call Google Maps or whatever it is, you're driving somewhere, you're walking somewhere, and you make the wrong turn. Then there's I forget the word, but recalculating.
Yeah, it's always recalculating, sure.
So same thing with history. God gave us free will. And in the end, we're all going to make it. We're all going to where we need to be. The question
He owns
is,
it all.
How many mistakes are we going to make the way? And we have to recalculate and maybe be reincarnated, right? And it's going to take a lot longer, right? Because it says when you start out on the trip, it says it's going to take you 13 minutes. And then 13 minutes in, you realize you didn't follow the instructions exactly. And now you got 23 more minutes. And you wonder how the heck it started out 13 minutes. I should be there already.
You know, Rabbi, the worst with following a lot of these self-guided or these GPS maps, the worst is I have seen people, especially here in the Canadian Midwest, developments are so new. Okay, you're following a GPS. You've seen these kids, and they drive right into the middle of a field,
well, as long as you don't
muddy field that you can't.
A neighborhood with terrorists.
I guess.
I wanted to discuss something. I just have to find my notes now. Here,
Rabbi, I think you're really teaching us something that will speak to the world to really understand where they can find guidance, whether it's to the left or to the right, to know which way to walk in. I think you're right on something huge here.
Let me just finish this, and then we'll go to the next subject. So you should not deviate from the word that they tell you, right or left. It's so amazing that the rabbis tell us that even if they tell you that left is right and right is left. Now, come on. Common sense says, no. If they're wrong, I'm going to go against it. But if you read the rest, it says, no, you can't do that. In fact, you should be killed if you would go against them. I want to emphasize this point, what it means, but let's get back to it. And the man who will act with willfulness, not listening to the Kohen who stands there to serve Hashem your God, or to the judge, that man shall die. And he shall, right? And you shall destroy evil from among Israel. The entire nation shall listen and fear, and they shall not act willfully anymore. How can it be that if you follow them, you know they're wrong, but you're doing the right thing? Well, the Torah just said it, okay? But why should that make sense?
It's hard for me, Rabbi. A very hard thing. I mean, if it's sound, and it makes perfect sense, it's easy to, but when, if I don't get it.
Listen, there's going to be a difference in what you do in public, what you do in private, okay? Is it really violating okay, or you're going to continue to teach your own way. So there's a few different levels here. You're a teacher, and you're going to continue to teach what you think is right against what they decided. It's wrong. You feel that there's something that they said is wrong, and privately you're going to do what you think is right. As long as you're not violating it in public and you're not doing something against the Torah, perhaps it's not a big deal. Okay? But what the real problem here is like this. Two levels. I'll call it, I don't know what the word is, but like there's a default or an automatic fix. So the automatic fix is that the Torah itself says if they were wrong, the sin lies on them and they have to bring an offering for the congregation. So what do you have to lose? This is what God says to do. Okay, we're not talking about what kind of major issue. They're talking about something that was impure and it became pure, and like you brought it into the temple and you didn't realize. What's the big deal, right? You're talking about something like between man and you're killing somebody. They're not going to make any kind of mistake like that. What kind of mistake could they possibly make? You're talking about the highest level of knowledge on this earth, and they made a decision, 70 of them. Everyone can speak 70 languages. They know all the different sciences and mathematics and medicine and philosophies and astronomy. Okay? You're smarter than them. You're going to say, I'm smarter. What I perceive as left and it's really right. Who are you? It's such arrogance. Okay? It's a little bit of, like we said, who's a Jew? I'm going to be obedient. I have to follow the rules that God set out. God says do everything they say, even if they're perceived as being wrong. Okay? And if they're wrong, it'll be taken care of. They're taking responsibility. Okay? So is that the doctrine of man? By following man in this exact description that God himself tells you. If God tells you, I would say it's not the doctrine of man. I hope anybody's listening. It says in the Torah, this is what God wants you to do. So why is that following the doctrine of man? It's following the doctrine of man when you found some guy who found some tablets in the middle of I don't know where and tells you that he had a personal revelation with God somewhere. I don't know, just the idea that one person is telling you that he had a revelation as opposed to relying on 70 of the wisest and most righteous people on the planet in exactly the spot or as close to the spot as God tells you this is exactly what you're supposed to do. So we don't have the Sanhedrin today, but everything we had in the Gemara was up until the time of the Sanhedrin. So it was canonized. It was basically, I'll use the word canonized. You have all the Tanaic sources, right? And it's just fascinating. Okay.
Amazing.
I want to talk about blessing because you have two important verses, and I want you to read them both for me. Go to Psalms 24:1.
Yes, sir. You want me to read it?
Please.
Psalm 24, verse 1, the Psalm of David. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein.
Okay, everything in the world belongs to God. And I'm talking about this from the language of being grateful, being praiseworthy, all to the Lord. Very nice. So everything belongs to God. Am I allowed to benefit? Am I personally allowed to benefit from anything in this world if it all belongs to someone else? From what we understand of thievery, absolutely not. That's thievery, correct? And a Ben Noach is what?
Well, are
Wait
we
till
allowed?
I'm going.
Okay, I better
Go ahead.
Wait till I hear the whole of the matter. Yeah.
Look at Psalms 115, verse 6.
115. You want me to read it, Rabbi?
Please.
They have ears, but they hear not. Noises they have, but they smell not. Noses they have, Noses they have, but they smell not. So they have ears, but they hear not. Noses they have, but they smell not.
Okay, so that's not the verse. Let me just see why. Maybe it's one verse before or after. It's
They have
Psalms
mouths, but
115.
they speak not. Eyes, they see not. 115 verse.
I thought I said 6, but let's just see.
7 says they have hands, but they handle not. Feet. Yeah, that's Psalm 115.
Okay, so I don't know where the verse is. There's a verse that says, it's verse 16, not 6, 16, sorry.
Oh, that's an honest mistake. The heavens are the heavens of the Lord, but the earth hath he given to the children of men.
Okay, so what do we see in 24:1? That everything in the entire universe belongs to God, and I mean belongs to God. And in this verse, which I'm now going to correct with a pen, is verse 16. It says, whatever's in the heavens belong to God, but what's down here on the earth, he gave to man. So if I ask you, so what is it? Here's a nice steak. Is it God's or is it yours? Well, you got two very contradictory verses, I'm sorry to tell you. All right? They really do contradict each other. They do.
Yeah, in the true strictest din sense. But
So listen, we're not going to live in a doubt, okay? God says if you have a doubt, you go to the Sanhedrin, right? Can I benefit? Is it stealing? Or did God give it to me? Well, which is it? So the rabbis tell us that before you make the bracha, before you make the blessing, it's God's. And therefore, if this is for a Jew, and I assume that at least in principle, some concept, and maybe a non-Jew can understand this as well.
right.
If you don't modeh, if you don't acknowledge that it's his, it's stealing. As soon as you are modeh, as soon as you admit, as soon as you declare it's yours, God, he gives it to you. And
Wow.
then you're allowed to benefit from it. Otherwise, it's stealing. This is how a Jew is brought up. And we said that a Jew makes 100 blessings a day. Look in Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 12. We said, what does God ask of you? Bemeh, bemeh. King David is the one. He instituted, or reinstituted, 100 blessings a day. I believe he reinstituted. It was just forgotten. But either way, King David's pretty good source for me. You know, whether it was a new chidush for him, but it says in the Torah, b'meh, b'meah, with 100 blessings a day. So I think this is there's so much wisdom in the Torah that you think twice before you eat. Wow, this really belongs to God. Look what he gave to me. This beautiful looking fruit, and it smells nice, and just imagine, I don't think we all think about the nutrients, but certainly if you compare it to a Twinkie, an apple, you know, listen, the Twinkie still have to make a blessing on. I don't know if they have Twinkies anymore, but you know what I mean. Some kind of stuffed
Sweet treat,
sugar.
yeah. Useless
Either way,
useless
it
treat.
could get you through the day. It could get you through the moment, get you to the class, whatever it is. How are we doing on time?
Well, we've almost been 90 minutes, Rabbi. But if you want to continue, you go right ahead. But I found that you just brought that so alive about the gratitude. You know, I was thinking to myself, just because I walk under the shade of a tree, is it, do I have to give thanks for the shade of the tree? And then all of a sudden I think of, Jonah at the end of the book, and I'm thinking, the gourd over his head, and I think, you know what, the rabbi's telling you the truth here, Dan. Just be more thankful, and when you're not, I don't think, especially us B'nai Noach, or those of the 70 nations, we don't realize that we're actually acting animalistic when we don't give thanks.
Okay, so yeah, we have a lot to learn. We have a lot to learn. Everyone on the planet, and Baruch Hashem, God gave us 120 years, and we should take advantage of the time, right? This is also during the Svirah we call the counting of the Omer, make time count, right? We're not just counting time. We're trying to make time count. So I'll end with this little short lesson. I don't know how short I can try to concise it, make it very concise. But even though we have this idea of 50 days, and by believe it or not, right, 50-day journey to Har Sinai, and we have to count each day, that by the Jubilee is also this concept of 50 years. But it says by King David, he says God made the life of man 70 years. Well, is it 50 years or is it 70 years? So we have a teaching, and this is a very, I think people would have a lot of understanding and rachmanut, a lot of mercy on humankind when they hear this, that God does not judge the human for the first 20 years. Right? For a Jew, when he becomes 13, he's obligated in all his earthly activities, and he'll be judged by a human court. But anything that one does against God, he totally overlooks, because he knows you are in the process, I'll call it adolescence or development. You're really trying to find yourself. And he has such mercy. He created us. He knows. So the first 20 years don't count. It's every year from the 20 year till your 70th birthday, those 50 years. He's telling you, make an accounting of your life. Right? These are just lessons that a non-Jew can say, well, I'm not obligated to count every day. I'm not celebrating, Jubilee. I don't live in the land of Israel. I'm not really relating to it. But there are lessons about everything, and this is make life count, right? I hear people counting. Now they're in the 70th day of the quarantine. I don't know what day of the quarantine we are, but are you just counting the days, right? What happens in your life? Make the most of it. Learn, pick up a book, start a conversation with somebody, ask them how they achieved what they achieved, how they got to where they are. I mean, what's the problem? Here we have phones. I think they're almost free. The phone call, like any zip code in a certain, continent is almost like free these days. I don't know. And then you have, forget the phone, you have videos. You have so many ways of talking to people, communicating with people, emails, WhatsApp, this chat, that kind of chat. I mean, don't be afraid. Run into people. When you finally run into somebody after not seeing somebody for days, you can find out what their life is like. How are they surviving? What are they planning on doing with their life? I don't know. There's so much to learn from other people. Who is a wise person? Who is a wise person, right? Because that's what we talk about wisdom tonight, is someone who learns from everybody. What does that mean? You have to have an attitude of humility. Even if it means to learn what not to do, there's something you can learn from everybody. So my prayer is, first of all, Shavua Tov, Chodesh Tov, that we all are on the path towards wisdom, and that is, believe it or not, that's the first of the 4 levels that we're discussing in Mesilas Yesharim. So at least we got some of the principles across. And I look forward to next week. It'll be after Shavuos holiday, if we're still learning, Motzi Shabbat, or whatever time it is, wherever you are in the world. And what I really would like to see is certain comments. You can the private message me. At least I have an idea what is on the people's minds, what direction they want to go in, what I have already spoken about that might raise questions, bothers them. And the earlier I get these questions, the more I can prepare. So my first few sessions, I got quite a few, but they stopped coming in. So I don't know if they stopped coming in because people are so busy with other things, or what. So
Rabbi, you're developing a good group here, and all I can say is those that are with us, some of them attend many other broadcasts I do, and a few of them are new, but I find that they're a good group that nobody wants to ask a bad question, okay? And they're learning and growing, and they're giving you the honor and respect as a rabbi, and they're saying, wow, more often than not. So they are learning lots from you. We're digesting it. They're taking a step back, and please don't take it the wrong way if they're not asking questions. You must understand that as a B'nai Noach, as somebody who's in the 70 nations, a lot of this is coming at an angle that is something we've never thought. And I find this most often with Judaism, especially somebody who came out of teaching or within Christianity. I find the rabbis share things that you're never going to hear there. You're just not going to hear it. There's notions that are beyond, that fly above anything that they can think or imagine. And so when you're throwing out this soundness and the truth of the whole matter, it's like, wow, we can't say anything negative. And in order to have a question, I find that there's a good, honest, legitimate transition in people's lives when they become a B'nai Noach. They don't want to ask a question out of respect for you and your valued time, because I have seen rabbis that will spend days, weeks, hours, and grieve over a question to come for the right answer to the right person. B'nai Noach, they find out early when they become one, when they do legitimate teshuvah, turn away from idolatry. What happens is a lot of them, like when they were in Christianity, they want to go knock on the pastor's door 20 times a day. They want to ask questions 50 times, a week. And then they start to realize, wait a second, there's only so many million Jewish people in the world. There's only so many of those that are rabbis. There's only so many of those that'll even speak to us. They're valuable, and I find, talking even in the past with someone like Rod Reuven, who does a lot of outreach with B'nai Noach down in Texas there. The reality is, he says, he's got a group of rabbis that are at the head of that organization, and he's his title was, a leader of education or something. He says, he doesn't have people come and ask him those same questions like when he used to be, he was a military chaplain. When he was one before, he says, people come bombarding questions. And we learn quickly from you rabbis. We learn quickly that coming with a loaded question is not an honest question. And we want to be respectful. So please don't take it the wrong way if we're not asking questions. If you do get one from somebody who's been a B'nai Noach for a couple of years, they get this, and they're basking and soaking. We're not like porous sponges that just slurp it up. We're trying to digest. And I'm thankful. Like when I started studying ethics of the fathers, Musar in general, 20-something years ago, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're not hearing this stuff from anywhere else on the planet. And I love how you touched on some stuff today. Do as they tell you, even if you don't agree with it. Because I did a broadcast the other day with a rabbi, and he made one point, and I says, I ain't buying it, right on the live. And yet I love the fellow, and more than that, I respect him as a Torah scholar. And I actually said that. And afterwards, I had to apologize. But
I don't know what the incident happened with this particular rabbi, but maybe I might have misled people. We're talking about Sanhedrin. We're talking about the Talmud. We're not talking about your average, everyday Joe rabbi that you meet on the street. You have to listen to, okay? We're talking about the majority of the rabbis. We're talking about when there's a consensus.
Right.
Amongst those who are kosher, right? You might find like Reform Judaism. Okay, it might disappoint some people here, but they're not in the category of the consensus, right? We're talking about people who are close to being candidates for the Sanhedrin, as opposed to non-believers who just happen to be Jewish and are very into academia. That's not what. So just keep that in mind. You're talking about one rabbi with one opinion. Okay, it doesn't mean you have to do exactly what he says, but if he's telling you the consensus of this is what Orthodox Judaism believes, yes. I mean, basically, you should contemplate exactly what he's saying.
Makes perfect sense.
I just want to make sure. Also, this brisa that was brought in by Rabbi Meir, there's some of the opinion that, first of all, when Rabbi Meir is arguing, there's no argument here, right? It sounds like it's a contradiction, but there's really no contradiction. When we don't go by Rabbi Meir is when there's a straight-up argument, number one. And according to another opinion, it's not Rabbi Meir, it's Rabbi Yirmiyah. It's almost the same letters in a different. So just so if anybody thought that I was trying to say we don't hold by Rabbi Meir in this case, this is obviously a very, the Gemara concludes, we do, right? It's talking about the 7 Noahide laws. He would be like a Kohen Gadol. Even the Rambam passes like that. So we're not talking about an argument of Rabbi Meir. If it is Rabbi Meir, and according to some it's Rabbi Yirmiyah, but just to get that through, that I was not saying we don't pass like Rabbi Meir in this case, because there's no argument, no clear argument. Okay, so.
Excellent. Well, shall we wind it down with this, Rabbi, that last statement? Or have you got one more you want to say?
No. I mean, I have a lot more. So there's no point. There was a tremendous amount that I prepared, and I'm just afraid to enter any of it right at the moment.
Right.
So we'll go through my notes and see what I didn't cover, and I'll pick it up next week. Excellent. You know what I mean?
And folks, please take this from the rabbi himself, Rabbi Poston, saying, hey, send him some questions in advance. If you give him the questions, he'll take the time. He'll come up with a great part and work it into the discussion. We're enjoying the crowd that's coming out. I want to thank you all for being with us. And you can find Rabbi Poston on his website, yiboneh.com. Feel free to go in there. Check him out. Support him, folks, and what he's doing there in Jerusalem. He's doing wonderful work. I find that he's, so community-oriented and teaching people about how to be kinder in their communities, that it's just a wonderful opportunity to get to know a lovely rabbi like him. But more than that we get to hear Torah from Jerusalem. So you can find him on social media as well, Facebook, YouTube. I know he's reached out in the last 5 weeks, jumped into so many different Noahide Facebook chats. So if you see him out there, folks, you friend him and ask a question if you have a question that might work out. We want to learn more beyond the 7 that are really universal and just comprise, and we want to hear it come from the Torah and what the sages have to say. So, Rabbi Poston, I want to thank you for today's broadcast. It got off to a little slow start, but I think you really took it home in the end. So I look forward to next week, Hashem willing. So until then, have a wonderful, wonderful week, folks.